Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the POK Podcast. Today we're going to be doing something a little different, just to kind of give us a break from some of the crazy stuff in the news and how hard that can get on an emotional and psychological level. So today we thought that we would talk about some of our favorite bingeable TV shows and kind of like give them a little review, give them a score, what makes them so bingeable to us.
So we should probably address the elephant in the room.
Oh yeah, so since this is going to be a fun cast, this is going to be a fun cast. So since this is going to be a fun cast, we let the pets in here. So our dog is over there, and then this is Jafar.
Who is vigorously cleaning himself in front of the camera.
He really wanted to be involved. So
for context, he's been there for like 30 minutes straight and has not moved.
Yeah, yep. But we figured since we were going to have some fun today, we wouldn't lock them outside of the room because they hate it.
So
let's jump in.
Yeah, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking we've collected our own little list of shows that we've watched in their entirety. Mm-hmm. So they're shows that we know fairly well. Mm-hmm. And we just kind of want to talk about just how bingeable they are and maybe give you guys some ideas of what shows you want to check out next.
Absolutely.
And so we're going to be rating them. We're going to give them, I think we decided we're going to give them a letter grade.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be rating them on 5 different things. So the first one is just the quality of the acting / writing. Right? How well is it written? Does the dialogue seem to work well? Did the characters perform well? Mm-hmm. How does it look? How original is the series?
Right.
So with some of these, they're more just guilty pleasure or...
like it's super bingeable, but you can objectively say...
More of the same, but like it's more of the same stuff that you want.
Exactly.
And so also one thing that we're going to look at is also continuity and storytelling. Mm-hmm. So with a lot of these shows that go on for 60 plus, 50 plus episodes, and some of these even up to 100 episodes, one of the problems that you end up finding with series that go on for so long is that eventually they just get watered down. The writing gets worse.
Or they start real grasping for plots.
They run out of ideas. And so we're going to be judging some of these shows based off of that. And then also availability. So how easy is it to watch these shows in the sense of, are they on Netflix? So in which case they would be widely available. Mm-hmm. Or is it more on a pay to subscribe, like HBO, or Stars? Mm-hmm. So that'll be another factor. And then lastly, how well do they use their budget? So we'll make some contrasts and comparisons when we talk about this particular aspect. Right. But there are several shows that use their budget really, really well, where they work what resources they have into the story and make it real pretty when necessary and make cuts where they need to.
And we're also going to talk about shows that were massive disappointments for us.
I think you have one in particular in mind.
I have one.
But yeah, so we're going to take these 5 little criteria, if you will, and rate these shows, see which ones are the ones to watch, the ones that we would recommend for you guys to watch. We watch a lot of TV. Mm-hmm. So
no shame, though, because we love watching TV movies.
Well, yeah, and a big part of why we made this podcast was just ideas that we picked and chose from watching our favorite shows. And so we just want to share some of that with you guys, talk about them. We already talk about them a lot, but we just wanted to share that info with you guys as well. And so we'll get started.
Yeah, let's jump in.
So number 1 on our list is Altered Carbon. Mm-hmm. So for those of you who don't know, this is a Netflix show. It's a dystopian. We got into it and probably binged it in a week maybe.
Probably something like that.
Yeah, so it's one of these shows. It's a fairly heavy show. I'll give you guys the synopsis real quick. So the series takes place over 250 years in the future, in the year 2384. In the future, a person's memories can be decanted into a disc-shaped device called a cortical stack, which is implanted in the vertebrae at the back of the neck. These storage devices are of alien design and have been reverse engineered to be mass-produced. Physical human and synthetic bodies called sleeves are used as vessels that can accept any stack. And it follows the main character, Takeshi Kovacs, who is a political operative with mercenary skills who wakes up 250 years after his previous sleeve was terminated,
Mm-hmm.
and then he's given this choice of either atoning for his crimes in prison or helping investigate a particular murder.
Right. I think first and foremost, this is one of the best shows we've watched in a while. There is so much going on in the show that is interesting, but I think for me, my favorite part of it was they do such a good job creating with their world building and with the immersion of the world that they've created and answering. I know for me, when I watch, so we watch a lot of dystopians and like future realms and that kind of thing. And when going into a show like that, I'm always really concerned about what kind of world are you creating and, you know, how well are you going to have suspension of disbelief? How well are you going to suck me into this world? You know, how believable is it?
There's a lot of elements you have to address, right? And especially when one of the core elements of this particular show is this idea of the cortical stacks, right? The idea that you could transfer your consciousness to another skin.
Right.
Effectively making some people immortal.
Well, yeah.
And so there's a lot of ethical issues that get drawn up in that. In the very first like few scenes of the show, they bring up some fantastic ideas about what it means to allow basically dead people to speak out against the people that murdered them.
Yeah, so that's
a fantastic idea.
They address religion in this show in a very interesting way. Murder cases they address in a really interesting way, and then you have this whole other element of the hyper rich and what does it mean when you have the power to live forever, and what are the implications and kind of downsides to that. And it's just such a fascinating show and so well done, and they really just knocked it out of the park, and I cannot wait for season 2.
Yes, that's the only downside so far is there's only one season to this show so far. Mm-hmm. It's fairly recently came out. I think it's been almost a year now, something like that.
Maybe not quite a year, but going on it.
Yeah, so it's been out for a little while, but not too long, and if you guys haven't seen it, it's an absolute must watch.
100%. 100%.
So where does this fall? We'll just kind of go down.
I mean, the
scale, but quality and acting wise.
Quality and acting, absolutely fantastic. So, I mean, obviously, there's some interesting character things going on in this show. We're gonna try really hard not to give you guys spoilers so that you can go into these shows excited to kind of discover things. But I think because of the way that sleeving works, that's not really ruining anything for you guys. It definitely creates some interesting acting moments for certain characters.
Yeah,
because
that's a good point.
This isn't really ruining anything. There's one scene where this grandmother, her stack is put into the body of this like thug murderer type person, and so on screen you have this very large, like tatted man, but he is an abuela basically.
Yeah, playing the role of a grandmother
in the scene, and so. I love it when you really get to see people challenged like that from a performance perspective.
Yeah, and it's pulled off almost
seamlessly. So well done.
It's very smooth. You can instead of your characters necessarily having a particular look to them, it's more of their personality that's the core thing.
Yeah, how do they talk? How does their voice sound? How do they move their hands and their body? And so. Kudos to a lot of the actors in this film, because there is people moving from bodies to bodies somewhat frequently, and they do such an incredible job with it.
Well, on that note, I think this particular show scores a perfect score for originality as well.
Oh yeah.
There's been plenty of dystopian stories written and on TV, but I don't think any of them have really executed an idea like this one quite as well.
Well, I would posit that we probably couldn't have done this show appropriately until modern era. Like, there is a high level of CGI in this show because of the future setting and because of some of the stuff that's happening. And I don't think that it would have been nearly as good 5 or 10 years ago.
Completely agree. Availability, it's on Netflix.
Everyone has a password to Netflix.
Continuity and storytelling, again, it's...
So the only thing that I would posit about this show is that it intentionally starts out a little confusing, right?
Yeah.
Well, I will follow that up with, once you understand everything that's happening, the payoff is so worth it. Because at first you're like, wait, what exactly is happening? And you're getting all this information about the world, but also about the characters, and it doesn't really make sense at first, but then you start to realize how it makes sense.
You're kind of thrown in the middle of a situation, but I think that's partly intentional.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you're very much seeing the story through the main character's point of view.
Right,
almost
right,
the
right,
entire time.
Right, I agree with that.
And you don't really get the relevant backstory that you might want at the beginning of the show until midway through to later in the series. But I think it works out very well. I think you just kind of have to embrace the uncertainty and not really knowing what's going on in the first couple episodes, because that's what it's like for the main character. And so I think it works out.
Absolutely.
And then budget use. I think they had a nice budget.
Yeah.
They had a nice budget.
It's a Netflix show, so...
Yeah, they were able to pretty much do whatever they wanted. Or at least that's what it seemed like.
I mean, I think I'm going to have to give this show an A. I love this show. It was done so well. Maybe an A-, but I don't even like that. I want to give it an A.
Yeah, I don't really have any negative things to say about this particular show. It's just we were truly awestruck.
Like I said, we watch a shitload of television, and this is one of the best TV shows we've seen in a very long time. So, hands down, bravo, good job, Netflix.
Yeah, and so let's. I wasn't even anticipating that we would start off right out with a perfect one. But these are our top shows, so most of these are really good.
Right. So the next
one's Orphan Black.
All right. So
this is a show is on Amazon.
Is it on Amazon? I think the first 2 seasons are on Netflix, isn't it? Or no, it's free. It's free on Amazon. I remember now.
Yeah, it's on Amazon. So this series is, I think, truly a very unique one.
Well, this was my favorite show until we watched Orphan Black, right?
So we have a new guest. This is Bella. This is the other black cat we have.
Baby girl, what are you doing? She's like, I'm busy, Jay.
What is with our cats and just like jumping in front of the camera?
Hey, you know what sounds like fun? I'm going to get in front of your camera, and then I'm going to clean myself.
See, this is why you're not allowed in here when we talk about serious things, Bella.
Bella. Nope, all right, not interested. Okay, so the second show, this was my favorite show until we watched Altered Carbon. It's called Orphan Black. So the series begins with Sarah Manning, a con artist, witnessing the suicide of a woman named Beth Childs, who appears to be her doppelganger. Sarah assumes Beth's identity and occupation as a police detective after Beth's death. During the first season, Sarah discovers that she is a clone and that she has many sister clones spread throughout North America and Europe that are all a part of an illegal human cloning experiment, and that someone is plotting to kill all of them. So this show,
even that synopsis kind of sounds a little bit spoilery, but like that's so surface level for what that show is.
I know it's.
That's there's so much to explore with that show.
Well, I think first off, with this show, my favorite thing is so the main actress plays several characters in the show that are all these clones, and as someone who has a lot of experience in theater, I was continually just so impressed with her ability to tweak her mannerisms and the way she held her mouth and her hands and her, eye movements. So, I mean, it wasn't over the top, but it was so seamless with, all right, I believe that this is one person and that this is another person and that this is another person. She just, absolutely knocked it out of the park in regards to...
She ended up winning an award for it. I can't remember the actress's name off the top of my head. But she ended up playing like 6 or 7 plus roles throughout the series.
Yeah, she is... Yeah.
And each character that she plays is so distinguishable from the other. And it's very easy to tell that this is an entirely new person with an entirely new personality and different motivations and desires. And it's so well done. But that aside, this is one of the few shows that tackles something like cloning.
Yeah.
We haven't. I don't recall, at least. There might be some. Let us know if you guys remember any shows that even mention this. But human cloning is a relatively, I would say, morally unexplored topic in TV. And this is one of the very interesting concepts. The idea that if you could physically just clone every bit of a human being, what are if you could clone into a human being that had thoughts and feelings, and the same thing with genetic engineering in many ways, which is talks about as well, is where does their choice come into it? Where does the clone's choice and freedoms come into it?
And that's addressed in the show, right? There's definitely this, are we people or are we an intellectual property? And so that's definitely a thread throughout.
Yeah, that is a reoccurring theme. It's this idea of, are human clones even people at all?
And obviously the clones would argue that yes, they are people.
So you're exploring this moral dilemma. There's actually quite a few gray areas in the show, and absolutely fantastic. As far as originality goes, this one is definitely up there for me.
Super original.
Where I would actually give this show a little bit of a less than perfect grade is on the continuity base, and you might disagree with me at this, but I felt they could have done the same show and made like one less season, or maybe even two less seasons. I feel like in some extent, it got watered down a little bit after the third season. And that being said, fantastic ending. Fantastic ending. But I felt like for a while they had a cliffhanger going. And
you didn't really like the resolve of that cliffhanger.
Yeah, which is drawn out.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
It was drawn out. But overall, I mean, like, I can't fault it too much, because they, even in those seasons that maybe weren't as appealing to me, they still introduced some brand new ideas, brand new characters, and made it work into the story flawlessly. And so for me, it did fine in that regard. Availability, that's a little bit more on the downside too, because it's a
BBC show.
It is a BBC show, so you do have the first two seasons on Amazon, but you have to pay for the rest. Yeah. And there's like, what, 5 seasons? 6 seasons?
I think there are 5 seasons.
5 seasons? Yeah, so availability-wise, it's not quite as easy to obtain as a Netflix show. But I will say it's absolutely worth it if you're looking for something completely different and new and fresh.
Yeah, kind of and some new ideas, too. So, budget use, I think also, I can't imagine that this show had a very high budget.
No, it definitely did not.
It was definitely dependent on its fresh ideas and its storytelling, which I am so cool with.
Yeah, it was very, very heavily reliant on the writing and the character design, and they did such a good job with that you didn't need a whole lot of fancy stuff on screen. It really kind of did its own justice.
So what grade do you give Orphan Black?
I give Orphan Black a B+.
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 See, I also give it a B+. And I think my grade would be higher if Altered Carbon was not on this list, but unfortunately Altered Carbon is on this list, and that means Orphan Black gets a B+.
Next up, this is a show that we've started watching recently, Crazy Ex-Girlfriend.
Do you want to read the synopsis for this one, or you want me to do it?
So I'll give you guys the basic summary here. So the main character is this girl, Rebecca Bunch. She's a Yale and Harvard educated real estate lawyer. She worked for one of New York City's top law firms. She was offered this partnership, got upset and panicked, kind of had an anxiety attack about it because she realized that she wasn't truly happy. And then she runs into one of her exes, Josh, of whom they have a small encounter, brief encounter on the streets of New York City, where he tells her, "Hey, I live in West Covina, California, where it's chill and everyone's happy," and then she just immediately decides,
I have to go there now.
Well, I have to go to West Covina. And so the story just kind of picks up from there, from her making this real radical move, just all of a sudden, this spontaneous decision, which is a theme throughout the show for sure. And I'm really surprised by that. I was really surprised by how much I ended up liking the show. So
you left out a very important element.
Which part?
This is a musical show.
That's what I was about to mention.
Okay.
It's a musical comedy romance, basically.
Right.
And the musical bit of it, which is probably the part that I was most
hesitant
for sure, ended up being my favorite part about the show by far. Like, if you could just give me the songs, I'd probably be fine.
And I think you made a really good point the other day when we were talking about the show and said that the song bits in this show are very much like funny musical videos on YouTube.
Yeah, and they're kind of like parodies of famous music videos in a lot of ways, but with a twist of like a comedic take on a real world problem.
Right, there's always some kind of social commentary happening with this show.
And it is glorious.
Yeah, and I think something that... so for me, what really knocks this show out of the park, because not every episode is amazing, but there is a fantastic balance of like slapstick humor and this kind of highbrow self-reflection humor. And kind of while that's going on, we're getting this running commentary of mental health and, you know, what it means to have a healthy relationship and good friendships. And it is funny and it is cute and weird sometimes, but there's also some really interesting ideas that they bring up.
Yeah, I completely agree. And to your point about it occasionally getting a little bit repetitive, the first season into the second season, so the end of the first season into the second season, about 3/4 of the way through the second season, it really got dried out for me.
Right.
The comedy wasn't enough to carry a stagnant story,
right,
or a stagnant character development. But what I will say is that season 2 finale changed it again.
Right.
Changed it for me. I wanted to get back into it. Season 3 is fantastic so far.
Yeah, they really changed it up for season 3. Oh boy, did they.
And then I think we're getting one more season after season 3.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be a 4-season story arc is what Kate was saying.
So as far as comedies go, this is a very, very good one. Takes a very unique take at comedy in a TV show through musicals, but does it in a way that feels fresh.
Right.
And so, you've seen musical skits on some of these comedy shows sometimes, and they're good, they're funny, but this takes it to it's almost like a really good SNL skit sometimes.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, if anybody watches SNL, some of the music videos that they do, the music in this show is similar to that.
But better,
yeah. Not to shit on SNL, because I love SNL.
Yeah, but they're also not quite as restrained, so they can they can really talk about and do whatever they want on on this particular show.
They get a little crass sometimes, for sure.
And that's part of what's so appealing and attractive about this show, I think. So let's see here. Let's
rate it.
Yeah, so on quality and acting,
I mean, yeah, it's a comedy, so not to say that comedy acting is easier, but there's not as much an emotional depth, so the acting for me is probably a B.
See, I would probably get everything aside from the musical aspect of it probably falls in the C range for me.
See, but season 3's acting,
season 3
got me shook.
Holistically, though,
that's fair.
It's a little bit more on the C range, but when you talk about how the show is carried by its musical comedy elements, I would say C plus B range.
C plus, okay, we'll give C plus.
Originality, I give it a fairly high score on that.
Yeah.
It's a very fresh take on a musical comedy, especially in a TV show. One thing that we should mention about it is the episode lengths. Yeah,
so they are. So most sitcoms are like 20 3 to like 24 minutes per episode, and then you have primetime dramas that run anywhere from 44 to 48 minutes. This show is almost always between like 33 and 35 minutes. Some of the episodes push on 40, but I think that is a very interesting choice because it's not quite the long-winded bit that you get from primetime drama, but it's not quite as short and clipped as maybe a comedy sitcom. So they can still get that kind of emotional depth, I think, with having that extra time, but still be able to have the jokes and them not get too stale or long-winded.
Yeah, no, and they can actually have enough time to create a structure for the story that has a backbone, and it's not just based on these 30-minute clips.
Right.
Or 20, or really for the 30 minutes times of segment, you would have, 23, 24 minutes of actual airtime?
Yeah, it's like 22, 23 minutes.
So yeah, no, they have more time to create a story behind the comedy that just bumps everything
so
up.
snaps to that, for sure.
Better,
yeah.
Continuity and storytelling, we talked a little bit about that already. Availability,
Netflix.
it's on Netflix, so it's
100%
easily
available, yeah.
And budget use.
I can't imagine, again, that they had a very high budget for this show, and they for sure dumped their budget into the music videos, but I think that is one of the, like, shining pieces of this show, so I'm going to say good budget use.
I agree. I don't really have any extra commentary on that one. It's fairly obvious that most of their production value goes straight into the music videos, which in and of themselves are
huge
great.
Part of the show. Yeah,
they're great. So,
what do you give Crazy Ex-Girlfriend?
Mostly for the continuity issues, I give it a B.
B. I also
maybe
agree.
like a B minus.
Yeah, I was gonna say B minus. Again, great show, and we're scaling on a very steep scale, but B minus for sure for me.
Yeah. So this next show I'm excited about. So I've been...
This is our favorite show right now.
I've been hooked on this show. Like, I counting down the minutes until I get to see this show.
It comes on
so I'm talking about Into the Badlands. It actually comes on tonight. We're filming on Sundays. Show airs on Sundays. We are watching it tonight. Okay, so Into the Badlands. This is another dystopian, but it's very, very unique, I would say. So it's not a futuristic dystopian like shows.
I mean, it's 100. What did you say? 100 years, 200 years in the future?
Yeah, but it's not futuristic in the same sense. So like,
yeah, I mean, there's not flying cars and shit like that.
Yeah, like with Altered Carbon and another show that we'll talk about, the 100. It's very much you see the development of technology.
Well, dystopian doesn't mean tech. It just means future and fucked up.
Well, I know, but like it's a very different take, I would say.
Fair.
On what a future dystopian looks like.
Fair.
It's like in the future, but we've gone back several generations. Yeah. So with Into the Badlands, so it takes place many years after whatever unbeknown event happened.
Present day. Yeah.
That wiped out civilization.
Can I read this?
Yeah, go ahead. So this is the segment that is read at the beginning of the show by one of the main characters.
All right. The wars were so long ago, nobody even remembers. Darkness and fear ruled until the time of the barons. 7 men and women who forged order out of chaos. People flocked to them for protection. That protection became servitude. They banished guns and trained armies of lethal fighters they called clippers. This world is built on blood. Nobody is innocent here. Welcome to the Badlands.
I liked it.
Yeah. Narrated by MK.
So, one of the... We both had some things that we wanted to talk about with this particular show, but for me, what I found was very interesting. They mention in this first bit here that there's no guns. So I think that's one of the a big difference between this dystopian and some of the other dystopian stories that we look into, where guns are a huge part of it in many ways, where guns are a rarity in some cases, or they are a sign of power.
Right.
Don't give this kitty a gun.
No, again, Jafar wants everyone dead.
We actually got this book for her brother one time. It was
How to Teach Your Cats About Gun Safety.
Yeah, How to Teach Your Cats About Gun Safety, and we actually like read passages to Jafar. He wasn't amused. So yeah, back to Into the Badlands.
Yep.
So they have this interesting dynamic where there's no guns in this world, where it's very much like this medieval feeling in some ways.
Yeah.
But they also have cars.
It's almost like it's got a little bit of a Mad Max vibe to it.
Yeah.
Just like a touch of Mad Max.
And the other things, I don't even know really where to put this show as far as genre goes, because you could call it a martial arts film, which is kind of it's like a combination of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Lord of the Rings, or maybe not even Lord of the Rings. Oh,
Mad Max.
Mad Max. Like it's got fantasy elements. It's got your very classic martial arts.
Too. Drapa.
Yeah, it has your very classic martial arts elements to it. You got the fantasy, then you have the dystopian bits. Yeah, it's kind of all over the place, but somehow they make it work. What I will say about the show, the first season was okay. It was okay. It was like maybe a solid C.
Solid C, yeah.
Yeah, but it was fresh. It was new. I was kind of in the mood for some over dramatized action sequences.
Yeah, so that's the one thing, right? Is that specifically in the first season, there is very much this over dramatization of the action sequences, but it works for the show.
Yeah, it does. Like I said, first season you very much get the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon feeling.
Yeah, and you just kind of have to say to yourself, like, all right, I'm here for this.
Yeah, you just kind of say, okay, I know this can't happen, but it's happening, so let's just roll with it. Let's just roll with it. But yeah, and then you have this idea of the barons and them being the rulers over really what is society in that world.
Right.
And just how messed up that system is, and where the dynamic is between what do they call the servants again? What's their
Clippers?
No, not the Clippers. The
cogs.
The cogs. So the cogs are the servants, and it's such a it kind of comes back to these feudal days of where you are willing to trade in your servitude for
safety.
And it's very much back to that same mentality. And then you have these Clippers who are just these trained fighters and hunt down outlaws and act as the warriors for the barons.
Right.
It's such a hard show to describe in many ways, because
there's so many elements, and you would think that it would get messy because of that, what's going on, but they do a really good job of working everything together, I feel.
Yeah, and then I think the choreography for the fight scenes actually improve in the second and third season.
Yeah, I think the second and third season. If you guys ever have watched a show and been like, the first season wasn't great, but you need to watch it, like that's how this is. The first season is a solid C, but you need the background and the context and the character developed from season 1 to really appreciate season 2 and then into season 3.
Yeah, that's so spot on. There's too much stuff that's going on in the second and third season that are so dependent on actions that were taken in the first season that you just have to be a part of it.
So my favorite part about this show, obviously I love all of the things we just talked about, but I love the design in this show. When I was an undergraduate and I did theater, a lot of my focus was around costume design and set design, and the way that they use color in this show is just, I love it. So you have this very much kind of desolate area. I mean, there's remnants of what the world used to be, but there's also a lot of like dirt and natural colors and that kind of thing. But all of the barons have a very distinct color palette. So you have one baron who has clippers, and they all wear this very like rich, brilliant royal blue, and it makes them stand out. And then you have another baron who uses white as her color palette. But even with that, there's a discrepancy between the high-ranking clippers, where it's very much this beautiful, pristine white, versus the low-ranking clippers, where it's more of this yellow, kind of dirtied white. They've clearly been washed a bunch of times. And in doing that, they create just very, very wonderful visuals as far as like the representation on screen and juxtaposition and composition on screen. And I just love it. There's one new character this season who every time he's in a fight, I'm just like, man, I love because the way they designed his costume, that there's just this fluidness and this kind of nice spread when he's fighting that makes him look even bigger than he already is, and kind of adds to his power. And I just think it's awesome. I love the design in this show.
Oh, absolutely. I think those details that you just mentioned are part of what after you get sucked in, it like keeps you there.
Right, I 100% agree.
So the first season, I think some mishaps in the writing and maybe a little bit on the acting part as well, and a lack of continuity in the first couple episodes of just figuring out what in the world is happening, I think made it a little bit difficult to kind of just jump head first into the show.
Right.
But I would say the last 3 or 4 episodes of the first season, and then all of the second season, and then all of what we have in the third season have just been the most like alluring TV. I haven't like been able to stop thinking about this show.
We need more.
Part of it is like, you know, I like my martial arts movies. I'm one of those guys. Like, I just like watching it. It's cool to me. Like, suspension of disbelief.
Well, and I think it has a little bit, like you were saying, a little bit for everyone. It's got some martial arts. It's got some dystopia. It's got some mystical, magical, supernatural shit. Yeah, there's just so much to love about this show. That's how I feel about it. Yeah, for sure.
Yep. So, what would you give Into the Badlands as far on so originality-wise?
Probably. I mean,
originality-wise, I don't think they take any necessarily like original, so to speak, ideas.
They just mash them up in a good way.
That's original.
Yeah.
So I'll say it's average with that.
Yeah. Okay, I can agree with that. What about writing? Like we said, first season, there's some issues, but then it progressively gets better and better. So
yeah, writing in the first season was maybe a C-, and then what was really carried by the acting of one character. I won't spoil who, but there's 1 to 2 characters that really just carry the show in the first season.
God, I forgot how good he was in the first season.
Yeah,
not the main guy, but
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, he's so good.
You have to watch the show. Continuity-wise, we talked about this again.
Yeah, my only complaint about the continuity is, God, do I want to know what happened. I tell Dylan this all the time. Like, they have clearly made the choice not to tell us how we got to this point, but there's all these little nuggets from
little Easter eggs.
Yeah, like there's a scene in a mine where this guy finds this like god awful like pimp $ ring.
Yeah,
it's so clearly from our era, and so that happens a lot where it's like, oh, why, how, what happened? I need to know what happened.
How did they get to that point?
Exactly.
And part of what makes this show so much fun to watch is that, very much like Game of Thrones, which happens to be the next show on our list, it's a fun show to theorize about. There's plenty to talk about with this show, and plenty of theories to talk about, and that's half the fun for me. If you like that and you like to talk about shows and theorize about what could be going on and how certain story arcs will play out, this is a show for you, absolutely. And to that note, I would say I would give it overall availability. It's on Netflix, so it's solid there. Budget use, fair. I don't see any major problems in the budget.
Yeah, no, I don't have any problems
again,
with the budget.
if you accept that the first season is imperfect and you're okay with it,
right,
and you allow yourself to get sucked in, the second and third seasons are fantastic. So overall, probably B+ for me.
Yeah, I'm gonna say B+. Maybe B+.
B+. I think I can't give it an A because that first season was just so average.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But B+.
For sure, B+. Yep.
So,
like you said, next is Game of Thrones.
I don't even think we need to talk about this one too much. This one's fairly self-intuitive.
Yeah. Go ahead.
You don't even need to really, like, at this point, I think what is mostly holding some people back from still watching it. So this is mostly for the people that haven't watched it. If you haven't watched it, I get why you don't want to binge on it yet.
It's so
long.
It is
There's
such a
so many episodes.
dense show too.
It's a lot of work to try and catch back up. And the other thing is that so many of the big plot twists have already been like spoiled 1,000 times over. So you already kind of know what's going to happen. But what I will say is that, and I might even put together a list because this is so important for y'all's cultural education. Okay, there are some key episodes that I think you don't have to watch the whole show, but I think as long as you got the bit, you can watch Samuel Jackson's synopsis of Game of Thrones, and it'll help you out. I promise. It's hilarious. But if you watch that and then just watch some of the key episodes, right? So like the Hodor episode, Blackwater,
Red Wedding.
Oh, you can pass on Red Wedding. Like, you know what happens. Right, but some of these key episodes, you should be caught up and no problem and be sucked right back in. So yeah, it's a hard show to binge now if you haven't watched any of it because there's so much and it's so dense and
it's definitely one of the shows where you have to sit down and watch it and be active listening, 100% paying attention, and
otherwise you'll be completely confused.
Yeah.
So I mean, this one's like one of the easiest A's ever. I just don't have anything objectively bad to say about Game of Thrones. It's just on this list by like necessity. Like,
yeah, I think I give Game of Thrones an A-. I love the costuming in the show. I love the CGI. I love the character development. Love the storytelling, but it is dense content, and you have to be in the mood to watch it, and you have to be an active listener and an active watcher, and so that would be.
So maybe on a bingeability scale, it's an A-.
Yep.
For quality and just like objectively speaking,
the quality of the show is insane. Yeah. So our next show is the 100. Once again, a dystopia. As you notice, a trend. So do you want to? This was kind of your show before it was my show. So you want to start off on this one?
This is one of those shows that I ended up watching it on Netflix. I was bored. I was like, this show looks sort of interesting. I'll watch the first couple episodes. And I wasn't very impressed with the first couple episodes. The writing in the first couple episodes are garbage status.
Mediocre AF.
But the idea and the story, and actually surprisingly the CGI were fairly good.
Yeah, the CGI is good on this show. That's fair.
Relative to other TV shows, it's
because it's a cable network show.
Yeah, it's a cable network show, and it does pretty well. So the series is set 97 years after some nuclear apocalypse. So this is more of your traditional dystopian in that sense of like nuclear apocalypse, world ends.
Everybody dead.
And so there's 2,400 survivors that live on this space station called the Ark. The life support systems are starting to fail, and they have to figure out ways to extend their lifespan of the people that are staying on the Ark. So what they try is they send 100 people to the Earth to see if it's habitable.
They send 100 children to the Earth.
That's the other caveat, is that they send 100 children that were charged with
crimes.
With crimes, and any crime is punishable by death there, except with, I think, minors is how they did it.
Right, which is why they sent kids. Yeah.
So it's why they ended up sending the kids, is because they were viewed as exposable at the time. But you'll learn more about that once you watch the show. But one of the biggest downfalls of this show is how slow it took, or how long it took to get started, because of the very poor acting of the young actors in the first couple episodes.
Yeah.
But that
I wouldn't even call it poor. It was just very mediocre.
And part of that was due to the writing.
Yeah,
the
that's
writing
fair.
wasn't very good. But what I will say about this show is that it has a fantastic pool of characters. It has a story that gets incrementally better over time instead of worse, which is what typically happens with shows that go on for a long time. And it's very much if you've what's the book I'm thinking of where the kids are on the island?
Kids are on the island. Are you talking about
with the conch show?
Oh, you're talking about Lord of the Flies.
Lord of the Flies. That's exactly what the first season sort of reminded me of.
Yeah,
it's very much
a
Lord of the Flies
type
story for the first season, with these 100 kids that are by themselves with no ways of communicating
Mm-hmm.
To their parents or grown-ups. And so they just kind of have to figure things out, create their own government, create
Good luck.
food supply, and et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very fascinating. And then the whole world of what you think you know in the 100 expands very rapidly throughout the season. So absolutely a fantastic show.
Yeah.
And what I think was really the saving grace for this show was really its continuity, right? Where it started poorly, but it just got better and better and better, except for one half of a season later on. But that's just my personal opinion.
I watched the first season with you, and then I did not watch the second or the third season, I don't think. But then I got super into the fourth season, and then I've been watching it with you since. So I 100% can attest to it doesn't start out great, but boy, oh boy, does it get better. The acting improves, the writing improves, the story improves as far as quality goes.
And it's an intense show.
Yeah, well, I mean, like you said, not at first, it's not that intense. My suspension of disbelief wasn't really there in the first season, but it's definitely there now.
Yeah, they definitely stepped up the ante very quick.
Yeah, I buy into the stakes now.
Well, the thing was, in the first season, it was like, this is my opinion, but I think there was like one scene in like the 4th or 5th episode that it was like took a complete 180, where it felt like this very generic, poorly written show, and then all of a sudden something you just weren't expecting happens, and you're like, oh shit, like they mean business. They're doing some dark stuff here. But that's just my opinion. But what do we give the 100?
So for me, 100 is probably C+.
C+. So I think if you discount the first 4 episodes or 5 episodes, I would give it a solid B.
You think a solid B? I would give it, yeah, if you, I mean, no, I can't do that. If you're binging this show, I have to give it a C+.
See, for me, it's like if you're binging the show, I'd have to give it like a B+. Because as far as a bingeable show that you just want to constantly follow these characters,
that's fair.
And that the quality gets better and better, which allures you into watching more episodes. Their budget goes up too. The stakes get higher in each season. It has all the bingeable qualities to make you want to get sucked in.
I've moved my rank up to a B-.
I can accept that.
I move it up to a B-.
I mean, I still think you're wrong, but I accept it.
Well.
And then it's also on Netflix, right? So
yeah.
I think the first 2 or 3 seasons are on Netflix, so
and then
you
can
start watching it.
Go on the CW app and
then you catch up on the latest episodes.
Next.
So this next one, it's been out for a while, but I felt like we had to put it on this list.
Oh, God, it's such a good show.
The Newsroom.
It's so relevant.
So you want to talk about a show that actually is probably most relevant to us wanting to do this podcast. This is the show. It really highlights the difficulties and the struggles that a news organization goes through to accurately and unbiased report the news. And what are the consequences of that when you're not caring as much about profit anymore?
Yeah, so this show goes over 3 seasons, I believe, and it follows this news team who is struggling between the decision to report the news as they experience it and completely unbiased, and then, of course, the people that are funding the news station having very strong thoughts and opinions about kind of this open-ended biased reporting. And the main character is Jeff Daniels. If you guys don't know who he is from Dumb and Dumber. He's the blonde guy. But I love him in serious roles. I think he does such an amazing job. And he really just is flawless in this show. I love him in this role.
No, I completely agree. I think one of the other things that this show explores is what is the appropriate way to hold political figures responsible through a news outlet.
Well, and then the news outlet to hold themselves responsible too, like having information but maybe not being super sure about your source or not having a secondary source, and when do you go public with this information, and should you go public? And
yeah, that's the other thing, is it really does address some of the ethical dilemmas that pop up
in a newsroom.
And the acting is
phenomenal.
so good.
So good.
The speeches and the monologues in this show.
God, the monologues
are
in this show.
spot on. Yeah, I think
my favorite thing about the show is definitely the writing.
Yeah, no, it's
close second
fantastic.
to the acting, but the writing.
And the other bit to it is that the majority of the news stories that
are real
that they talk about are in the show are real news stories. So, what are you doing?
Just backing up and relaxing.
Oh, you were.
I was hunched forward. This is better. I like this better.
Yeah. So this isn't too much of a modern show, so I don't want to spend too much time.
Yeah, but it's so worth a watch.
But we bring it up mostly because it's super relevant to what the political environment is like today, and it's super relevant to why we want to do this podcast, which is trying to actually have informative discussions about the shit that actually matters.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And this is a great show to inspire you to do that.
So the next one is probably...
What do we give Newsroom on scale? What's our letter grade?
The Newsroom is just such a work of art to me as far as acting and writing. So I'm going to have to give it an A-.
Yeah, I'm going to give it... This might be my bias speaking, but I'm going to give it like a solid A.
Solid A.
Well, no, A- because second season had a few lapses, but not many.
Yeah, that's fair.
A-.
It's just it's definitely different than most of the shows we watch, but like I said, it is such a work of art to me that A- is where my ranking
originality wise, there hasn't been a show that's really done something quite like that in such a serious tone. Quality of acting, flawless, continuity. Again, except for maybe a few slip-ups in the second season, fantastic. Availability, it's an HBO show, so it's a little bit harder to get your hands on it if you, maybe a little bit more costly. But definitely worth it.
So
I was just as addicted to this show as I was when there was the current running season of Game of Thrones. So that's saying something because I'm a huge nut for Game of Thrones.
Oh, absolutely.
And then budget use, they did a fantastic job with that too. They used their resources very wisely.
HBO has more money than God at this point, so they can use their budget however they want.
And so for these next two, we kind of like have a big umbrella named Marvel.
Don't you dare. I thought you were going to say something bad about this next show. I was like, don't you dare.
No,
I love this show.
So we're just going to kind of put all these Marvel shows under one umbrella because they are all worth watching.
Absolutely.
Some more than others. So maybe that's what we'll spend our time talking with this. But really, you can't really say there's a whole lot of originality with these because they are based off of comics. They are stories that have been told before with a few unique twists here and there.
Fine.
But for the shows that we're talking about Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and we're talking about the Defenders series. So that would include Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, Daredevil, and Iron Fist, and also we'll lump in the Punisher with that.
Yeah, I'm lumping the Punisher with that.
So maybe we can start by rating the best to worst from the Defenders series.
Okay.
So we'll include Punisher into this.
I mean, if we're going to rate best to worst, Punisher was my favorite season.
Punisher was your favorite? I think
that there was a close second with the first season of Daredevil.
Yeah, I think the first season of Daredevil won it for me.
But they just did such a good job with the person they casted as the Punisher and the story for him and his performance. Like, I loved it. I thought it was great.
And then they also introduced the Punisher in the Daredevil series.
Yeah, he's introduced in season 2 of Daredevil, but he just recently, I guess just in the last year, got his own season.
I mean, realistically, you can even rate these on a season by season level.
Yeah.
So we'll say for me, it's Daredevil, Punisher, Luke Cage. Luke Cage because
season 2 of Jessica Jones was fire.
See, I had some opinions about it. Luke Cage and then Jessica Jones, and then maybe I can even tie Jessica Jones with Luke Cage, but Iron Fist is universally at the bottom.
Yeah, Iron Fist is.
I think just about everyone who has seen those shows would agree. Iron Fist.
He just doesn't have as much depth as I would like to as a character.
Yeah. I just don't have many good things to say about it.
It's not that I have awful things to say about Iron Fist either. He's just such a meh character to me. So if I was ranking them, I would probably go Punisher, first season of Daredevil, second season of Jessica Jones, tied very closely with Luke Cage because I thought that was wonderful in different ways, and then Iron Fist at the bottom.
So I really liked Luke Cage.
I did really like Luke Cage.
I would put Luke Cage over the second season of Jessica Jones, which is what you really liked.
Yeah.
So here's my problem with the second
I liked
season.
them both equally for different reasons.
Well, let's take a second to talk about Jessica Jones because we've disagreed on this. We need to address it. So, the second season of Jessica Jones, objectively speaking, I think, was worse in the writing than the first season. I think the story had some cool twists, but overall the continuity was not as good as the first season. And then they also added some things that could be dangerous to the show, which is making some very, very blunt and direct political statements.
That's fair.
So,
that's fair.
That being said, Jessica Jones, the second season, took some risks. It also was directed by all women, which can be a good thing and a bad thing, depending on how you want the perspective of the show to play out.
Right.
So yeah, I just think the Jessica Jones season 2 wasn't as smooth as the first one. The first one was dark and maybe harder to watch as far as the gore and violence.
It was just heavy for me. And I don't mind a dark show, but when you don't break up that darkness with hardly anything, it was just a heavy season to watch, the first season. But we watched the second season of Jessica Jones recently, and I haven't watched Luke Cage since we watched it when it came out, so.
Luke Cage, I think, was... The only thing I didn't like about Luke Cage was the very end of that series.
Okay.
So I thought everything up until the ending of that series, I thought the acting was phenomenal for the supporting
You're looking for
actors.
some badass action, too. Holy hell, is he badass.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's absolutely fantastic series. Really, it just came down to I don't think they had maybe the budget they wanted for that last 2 episodes.
That's fair.
I would have wanted to see a little bit more.
That's fair. But my favorite Marvel show is Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Hands down. It outranks all of the Defenders shows. So this is a show that Dylan got me into, I guess, a little bit after we started dating. And I had tried to watch it before, and I had watched, the first 2 episodes, and I was like, meh, it's not for me. And then Dylan told me, you have to hammer out the first 3 or 4 episodes, and then you're going to be hooked. And boy, oh boy, do I love this show.
100 episodes later.
It's so good. I'm so emotionally invested in these characters. To the point where I'm sobbing almost every time we watch this show. Just open sobbing.
So the one thing that I will say about this show is that I think it has always been limited by its budget.
Oh, absolutely.
So you have what feels like the kind of writing you would get from a Marvel movie, but doesn't have the...
Has the budget of a cable TV show.
Yeah, it has the budget of a cable TV show.
Absolutely.
But I will say, once again, and similar to, I think, the 100 in this regard, is that you just have such a nice character pool that it just carries that story with you, and then you can just suspend disbelief for some of the stuff that you see and say, okay, well, my imagination can fill in the blanks.
Exactly.
Here. And story-wise, they have quite a few unique story arcs.
Yep.
Overall, the show has not really become diluted. The overall character development is fairly strong as well. Overall, just a very well-rounded show. But I will say this comes a lot from our personal bias because it is more of the same on an originality basis in the sense that these are just superhero shows.
We love Marvel. We're huge Marvel fans.
Yeah, so if you like superhero shows, the Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. probably falls in the B+ range for me. Defender series.
It's an A for me.
I would put Daredevil way over Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I put Daredevil, the first season of Daredevil at an A minus. I would put the first season of Jessica Jones at a A minus.
Mm-hmm.
Put Luke Cage at a B plus.
Right.
Iron Fist at a C. Maybe C minus just because I don't like him. And the Punisher is probably a B plus.
So for me, Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. would be an A minus, just because they are limited by their budget. However, I would like to posit that any show that can engage my empathy in a way where I, one, am openly sobbing during the episode, and then like have to take time after an episode to collect myself emotionally, they did a good damn job, right? Like, because emotional connections and empathy and feeling for the characters is so important for me when I'm watching movies or television. And Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. just knocks that out of the damn park for me. So, A minus for them. As far as the Defender series goes, probably A minus for Daredevil, A minus Luke Cage, B plus Jessica Jones, A minus Punisher, and then a solid C for Iron Fist.
So I might even just like C minus, almost like D level.
Like, I don't want to fail you, Iron Fist, because I feel bad for you, but also
the only reason you're not failing is because you had a good supporting cast.
His sidekick is so good in that show.
His supporting cast carried him in that show, and same with the Defenders.
Claire Danes is my favorite Defender. Tell us in the comments below if you think Claire Danes is the best Defender.
They were talking about she might not be on it anymore.
Well, she carries the show, babe, so I don't know how they're gonna do it without her.
It's really the Claire show. Like, Claire is the ultimate Defender.
It's Claire and the Defenders. That's what the show is.
So these next two are very different shows that we're going to talk about.
Yeah, these are pretty different from one another.
Grace and Frankie.
Y'all, this show's so cute.
This is, again, one of those shows. I viewed it the same way I looked at Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, where I was like, this seems like it would be a cutesy comedy, maybe a little bit of romance in it.
Right.
But really what drew me to it was that the cast I had already become super invested in, because there's two actors that are big-time actors in Newsroom that showed up in Grace and Frankie.
Is it Jane Fonda and I don't know the other guy's name.
I can't remember either. But either way, I was completely sold on that alone.
Oh,
so I was like, okay,
yeah.
These actors have earned my trust. Whatever they do, I'm probably going to like. And turns out, I really liked this show.
You were correct.
So why don't you tell them a little bit about what the show's about?
All right, so let me fix these headphones. The series follows Grace, a retired cosmetics mogul, and Frankie, a hippie art teacher whose husbands, Robert and Sol, are successful divorce lawyers in San Diego. Grace and Frankie's lives are turned upside down when Robert and Sol announce that they are in love with each other and are leaving their wives. Now, the women who have never particularly liked each other are forced to live together and learn to unite and cope with their difficulties. Yeah, so basically they're in their, golden years, if you will, and their lives are completely shattered by the fact that their husbands come out as gay and that they're leaving them for one another. And so they have to kind of figure out, how to have a relationship with their ex-husband and how to build a new relationship with the woman who is 100% in the same boat as them, but they never really got along with. And, what kind of life do they have now without this person they've been married to for 20 plus years?
Yeah, and as hectic of a situation as that sounds on paper, where you would expect maybe some real prolific drama to pop up from something like that, I think the show draws you in because in reality, I think the characters would realistically just be shell-shocked. Like, what in the world just happened?
Right, I don't know what to do.
And so it's almost like this amicable ditziness to what just happened.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. So
it's not this huge brawling fight or anything like that, because the characters have so much respect for one another, and it takes a very interesting look at what a difficult situation it would be to be gay and be in a heterosexual relationship for an extended period of time and be married in a heterosexual relationship for an extended period of time.
Right.
And then the courage it takes to do something about that.
Right.
And then now its effect
on
and
the
consequence
people in your life,
on the people in your life.
Right.
And it's such an interesting dynamic and interesting situation, to say the least.
Oh, I 100% agree.
Which clearly creates some of the comedic gold in the show.
And it's so easy to watch, too.
And I think this is, again, another show where it really is just, it's carried more by the acting than the story, I feel like.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's
definitely an Antic of the Week style sometimes
type
show.
I think it's absolutely carried by the characters themselves and their personalities, and you just want to see more of who they are.
Yeah, that's a good point. You just get invested in them as people, and you're interested in hearing about their lives.
Like, you just want to check in and see how you're doing today.
You doing all right, boo-boo?
That's basically how it is.
I keep yawning, y'all. I'm so sorry.
Oh, we're both tired. We stayed up late. We had a friend over this weekend, and she decided to stay up till 2 in the morning, chit-chatting and watching TV. And I can't do that, but...
I didn't plan on doing that. It just happened.
She planned on doing that. She lying to you.
It was in my calendar. Stay up late.
Stay up till 2 in the morning, talking and chatting. And I understand. But what else do you want to say about this show? Is there anything else?
I think that, again, this isn't like a crazy complex TV show. It's easy to watch. It's easy to binge. You just fall in love with the people in the show, and you feel a lot of compassion for them and their journey. I think probably B- for me on this one.
Yeah, great. So Grace and Frank, I think you touched on hit the nail on the head with this one. Is that it's just a really easy show to watch. There's not a whole lot of investment you have to make. There's not a whole lot of paying attention. You can really just jump in onto whatever episode you want and enjoy it. So it's acting-wise, fantastic. Originality. It's definitely a different relational dynamic to look into. Continuity and storytelling. It's pretty consistently just an easy watch show all the way through. Availabilities, is Netflix, right? Or is it Hulu?
Grace and Frankie's Netflix.
So it's Netflix. Okay. And then budget, you didn't really need much of a budget with this one.
No,
but
it's a cute show.
It's kind of a cute romantic comedy.
100% agree.
With some drama sprinkled on top.
A little bit of drama sprinkled, yeah.
Yeah. So
and our final show.
B-
B- for you as well?
And so the final one we want to mention today, and there's, of course, extensively more shows to talk about, but just for the purpose of keeping this episode relatively short and to the point. Relatively short, because we could talk about TV for days on end.
Yeah, we're big TV junkies.
Yeah, we hopefully want to do more episodes like this where we just kind of discuss TV shows.
If you guys enjoyed this, then definitely let us know. Let us know if you want us to talk about more TV shows, if you want us to talk about movies.
Well, the other thing is, if there are specific TV shows that
you think we should watch,
or that you would like us to discuss on a more in-depth level, because with this one we're very much just giving a very brief overview of these shows and just our general opinions. But if you want to do like a spoiler deep dive into some of the really interesting phenomenon that happens in some of these shows, we're all for that.
I could definitely do that within the Badlands.
We're all for it. Yeah, we're all for that. So last but not least is American Gods. It's such a cool show. Yes, it's unfortunate though, because it's such a cool show that we don't really know its future.
Yeah, I know. Okay. The premise of American Gods is this. When Shadow Moon is released from prison, he enters a world he doesn't understand and meets the mysterious Mr. Wednesday. Left adrift by the recent death of his wife, Shadow is hired as Mr. Wednesday's assistant/bodyguard. He finds himself in a hidden world where magic is real, where the old gods fear irrelevance and the growing power of the new gods, including technology and media, in a grand plan to combat the threat. Mr. Wednesday attempts to unite the old gods, to defend their existence and rebuild their influence that they've lost, leaving Shadow struggling to accept the new world and his place in it. So, to summarize that, American Gods is about all of these different gods from different veins of mythology. So you have Norse mythology, you have Greek and Roman mythology, you have Egyptian mythology, you have African mythology. So it's all these different characters mentioned in their lore that are actual beings, and they are at odds with the new gods in the show, which are media, technology, there's, what is it, Tech Boy, media,
World.
Mr. World. So basically the things that we worship now, they have all the power because they have all of our attention, and the old gods are desperately trying to regain their power by having people believe in them. And, it's so fascinating.
Yeah, so this is...
It's based on a book by Neil Gaiman as well, right?
Yeah, I believe so. So this is a very interesting take on a world of magic and mythology, and you see this very interesting, unique dynamic of how the old gods respond and think of the new gods, where the people's worship is very much where they draw their existence,
absolutely,
for one, and their power. And so this one is one of those shows that I don't even want to talk about too much, not to give anything away.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil this for them,
because there's so many like little character development sequences, and the story arc itself is just, it's so rich that like I want you guys to like experience it for all the greatness that this show is. So the only the really to talk about this show, the downsides are that we're not guaranteed a second season.
Right.
No one's picked it up yet. And in order for it to get picked up, it needs a much bigger budget.
Yeah, because the gods start using their powers, right, in the first season, and they definitely need a bigger budget to compensate for the CGI that's needed.
Yeah, and the cast is phenomenal.
So good. Ian McShane is in the show, and he is flawless in this. The guy from the 100 is in the show.
I can't remember his name, but he plays Lincoln in the 100, if you get to that point.
Shadow Moon. I don't know his real name.
Yeah, I can't remember his real name. But yeah, this is a fantastic, unique show where you get to see how old tradition conflicts with
new ideology.
And new obsessions.
That's a great way to sum that up.
And so it's just a fantastically unique, interesting, and the characters themselves are fantastic.
So
the different gods are fantastic, and it's got a little bit of humor sprinkled in.
Well, I could definitely do a deep dive on this show for sure.
Yeah, and I think this show also gets the golden prize for best opening sequence on an episode.
God, the best intro. Oh my God,
intro.
The intro is so good.
Yeah, the intro is one of those. You could do a whole video of just talking about the intro.
Well, let's link, if you guys are interested, there's several people that have broken down like what everything means in the intro to this show, and it is fascinating, and it's so good. Matt Sweeney's my favorite.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be one of those shows where you're going to watch an episode and you're like, I wonder who that character is, and so you're.
We were totally on our phones, like.
You're going to be Googling stuff after each episode, trying to figure out what just happened and looking up the stories behind the mythology. Yep,
absolutely. We were totally doing that, and of course, both of us like mythology too. So during the episode, we're like, I wonder if that is. No, it's not that person. Oh, maybe it's from this. No. So yeah, it's super fun. A super fascinating show. A- for me. Just because it may not be coming back, and I really want it to.
You see, like, the uncertainty behind it is why I'm not on a bingeability level. I'm like, I don't know if I can give it a high grade.
It's just so worth the watch, though. Like,
it's so fascinating, but it's going to make you want to watch a second season.
And then you're going to be butthurt.
And then you're going to come back here and leave a comment and say, I can't believe these assholes convinced me to watch a show that's not going to come back. And I got totally invested.
I'm sorry, but it's so worth a watch.
It is that good. Highly recommend it. Probably a B+, A- for me as well. Characters are fantastic. The imagery and cinematography is
that's true
incredibly
too.
unique. The music is
Great.
phenomenal.
Great.
Character development, phenomenal. Yeah, it's such a great
Snaps
show.
all around for this show.
It is a
Snaps all
slow
around.
developing show, though. I will say that.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair.
And it
But
takes a while to connect the dots.
Yeah, but you get so many interesting nuggets while it develops.
Yeah.
I think it's totally worth it.
Completely agree. So, I think that just about wraps it up for this take.
Yeah.
But let us know what shows that you have maybe seen off this list that you have some thoughts about or opinions
Right.
about, or if you think we should just get rid of one of these shows off of our list because they're not that good, or if there's some other shows that you guys think that we should check out. Let us know. Please interact. Let us know what you're thinking, and some comments on whether or not you would like to see another video like this, if there's a specific show that you would like us to go in depth on, because TV is such an important part of our lives. It's an important part of escapism and just getting away from the nonsense that is our reality sometimes.
Well, and I think for me and you, it's very much about appreciating the art of the craft and, like, just embracing what other people created and being, fascinated by it and loving it.
And just completely falling in headfirst into a story and
falling in love with people over and over again. It's lovely. But as always, guys, if you liked this video, be sure to like and subscribe. Be sure to leave us a comment on what you agree with, what you disagree with, what you think we should watch, what you think maybe shouldn't be on the list. If you have a dystopian recommendation for us, be sure to drop that.
We love our dystopian.
We love a good dystopian. And I think that is it for this week. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
See you next time, guys.
Bye.